Escaping the devastation in Asheville. That's what we're talking about on this episode of the Driving with Rob podcast. Hurricane Helene came ashore as a Category 4 hurricane. Crossed over the panhandle of Florida as a Category 4. It weakened to a 3, then to a 2, as it came across the Florida Panhandle, the state of Georgia, part of South Carolina and Alabama, and then went straight to the North Carolina mountains. Now, the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina are considered to be a temperate rainforest. They're not a tropical rainforest like the Amazon jungle, but they are a temperate rainforest because of the amount of rainfall they get every year. That's the reason in the summertime, if you drive up to the Appalachian Mountains, it's all green and lush and beautiful because they get a lot of rain. But not this much. See, down in the foothills where I live, we were impacted. We got 6 inches of rain, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Trees were down, power was out. Some people where I live in the foothills are still without power, still without cell service, still without internet service. But for the most part, we made out okay. But in Asheville, they got 15 plus inches of rain one day. They basically got 3 months worth of rain in about a 12-hour period. 100-mile-an-hour winds. And when all the trees were knocked down and buildings were knocked down, then the floodwaters came. And the floodwaters were carrying this debris through the city streets, down the already flooded creeks and rivers, and took out bridges. Because now you have a house going 20 miles an hour down the river. It's going to take out every bridge it comes to. So here we are at this recording. Today is Tuesday, October the 1st. Pretty much the whole city of Asheville still has no electrical power, no internet service, no cell phone service. And of course, most of the devastation that you're going to see on the news is around Asheville, because Asheville is the biggest city in western North Carolina, which just means there's more to destroy. But I want to tell you about my son and daughter-in-law who are able to get out of the devastation in Asheville. Now, of my 5 children, the other 4 were accounted for. We knew where they were. 2 of my sons lost electrical power for a while. Another son who lives farther east in the greater Raleigh metro area, he said it was just windy and had heavy rain. So they were far enough east, they didn't really get impacted. But the closer to the mountains you got, the worse it got, and I had a 5th child and his wife trapped in Asheville. They couldn't get out. They had no power. Roads were blocked, power lines down, no internet service, no cell phone service. So we couldn't even check on them. We didn't know what was happening to them. We didn't know what had happened. Are they okay? Well, they're both bright kids. So they had fuel for their camp stove. And they had groceries. And they had water. So when they were finally able to get a cell phone signal to us, and it was spotty at best, it would just come and go. My son sent my wife a text message, and she received it 2 hours after he sent it. That's how bad communications are up there. But he was able to let us know that they had food and water, just no power, no internet, no cell phone service, but that they were okay. And this was on Saturday and Sunday. The hurricane hit Friday morning. Monday morning, they said, "We think we have a way out. We're going to try to come home." Well, I'd been watching the news reports. I knew that Interstate 40 was blocked. There was no way they were coming home on Interstate 40. There are sections of the Interstate 40 that don't even exist anymore. They actually broke off and dropped into the river. But they said they think they have a way out. And I don't remember this part of the story exactly. A friend who had a student at UNC Asheville, or the student from UNC Asheville, whatever the deal was, said, "You can't get here the normal way, which would be I-40. But you can make it as far as Asheville on I-26. And I-26 is the other interstate that goes through Asheville. I-40 runs east and west. I-26 runs north and south." So when we finally got a message that they had made it home, they had made it to my other son's house, I said, "How'd you do it?" He said, "You can take I-26 to Highway 74, and then you come home through probably Rutherfordton, Kings Mountain, Shelby, and then you come home." He said it was a little rough getting to I-26, but once you made it to I-26, from Asheville south, I-26 is pretty much open. I heard it's closed north of Asheville, but coming south it was open. So now all my kids are home. I know they're safe. And one of the things that prompted them to go ahead and try to leave is the manufacturing plant where my son works. They don't have electrical power, so they can't even run the plant. So he's going to be out of work for days. And he said, "If I can get out, I'm coming home." So all of my kids are okay now. But Asheville is still devastated. John said when he drove across this one bridge where you could look down and see the French Broad River in Asheville, he said that river used to be 20 to 30 feet below the bridge. He said now it's about 5 feet below the bridge. And remember, all this water is carrying debris, logs, whole trees. So he said it was a little spooky driving across the bridge that goes across the French Broad River. I've heard estimations that it may be weeks before electrical power is restored for most of Asheville. It may be weeks before they have cell phone service again. Probably months before certain sections of I-40 are passable again. It's bad when a hurricane hits the coast, but all that floodwater just goes back out to sea. When it hits the Appalachian Mountains as a full force hurricane, all that water's got to go somewhere. And right now, a lot of that water is coming down the Catawba River They already had to evacuate Mountain Island Lake because they had to open the floodgates at Lake Norman. And Mountain Island Lake is the next lake. And they were showing pictures on the news, and this is near my house. This is not in the mountains. But they were showing pictures on the news of some of these people that had high water marks on the side of their house when they were able to return to their house of 7 feet. So the floodwaters came up 7 feet to some of these houses that are about 15 miles from here. So all of this water that is currently in the mountains, all this hurricane water, is eventually coming downstream. A lot of it already has. And the power company that controls lake levels all down the Catawba River are trying to regulate it as best they can, let a little water out at a time as best they can without causing complete devastation downstream. So here we are, 5 days after the hurricane? Asheville still doesn't have power, or cell service, or internet service. The floodwaters have already come down here through the flatlands, and there's more water coming. We're not out of the woods yet, but at least all my people are home and they're safe. And that's really the best you can hope for. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Driving with Rob podcast. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for listening. You can find the Driving with Rob podcast anywhere you go to find podcasts. Tell a friend, share the link on Facebook, share the link on Twitter. Let your friends know if you like this podcast and you think they will too. Again, thanks again for downloading. I appreciate you. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye now.